Hello, everyone. My name is Neva Fairchild, and I've been asked to talk with you about living with vision loss. I've lived with vision loss all my life, and over the years, I've learned a few tips and tricks that I'd like to share. I've worked in the field of vision rehabilitation for almost 30 years, so vision loss is a part of my personal life as well as my professional life. I want you to think about whether you have stopped participating in things that you used to participate in because of your vision, or if you're reluctant to try new things because of your vision loss. And I'd also like for you to think about, what are you doing for fun to bring joy into your life? Is it different now that your vision loss has progressed? Have you figured out new ways to do things? There are lots of things you can do, modifications that you can make to continue to do things that you enjoy doing. And when we can do the things we enjoy, we'll also do things that we need to do to make everyday life much more enjoyable, to make us more efficient, effective, and to make us feel good about what we are able to accomplish, that sense of fulfillment that we all need. I want to talk about things today that are fun first. The things that people tell me they miss most as they lose vision are reading, watching television, and driving. And they're not necessarily in that order. I'm not going to talk too much about driving because until autonomous vehicles are perfected and we are all able to afford them, jump in one and say, take me to Target, driving is something that we have to look for other options. And I'll talk more about that later. Watching television is certainly something we can do depending on our vision loss functional limitations. Sometimes a bigger television helps. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a smaller screen helps. Sometimes getting closer to the TV helps. I always recommend that people sit directly in front of the TV if TV watching is very important to them. And then when none of that works or doesn't work well enough, audio description is available on a great many television programs and movies these days, both on our televisions through network TV, streaming media, and at the movie theater. So audio description, sometimes it's called video description, sometimes it's called descriptive video. All of the above are the same thing. A narrator speaks between the dialogue within the programming and describes the visual aspects of what you're watching. It's very widely available. A Google search will bring you lots of information. The third thing, reading, is something that's always been really important to me. I was able to read print when I was about 6 or 7 years old by holding the book right up flush to my nose. People often accused me of reading Braille with my nose, except there was no Braille. It was print I was reading. But as print got smaller, as my grade level went up, I became less and less able to read, and I missed it. And luckily, an Awake and Aware optometrist told my family about the Talking Book program, which is a nationally available program that is free of charge with thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of books. They can come to you on cartridge to be played in a player that you are loaned free of charge, a digital talking book player, which is marvelous. Has a great big speaker, a rechargeable battery. You can take it on the back porch. You can ride along with you in the car. Or if you have a smartphone, the Talking Book program has an app where you can download books right to your smartphone. And then there are other portable players as well. That's one of my best recreational programming choices for people who are losing vision. But you may say, oh, I don't know, Neva, I'm not really ready to listen to books. I still like to look at books. So you may want to consider a visit to a low vision specialist to look at optical magnifiers, regular magnifying glasses like you've seen all your life that everybody read maps with, and you might have used in a biology class to look at a bug on a presentation board. But these magnifiers are higher quality than you can buy in the regular map store. And they're prescribed at certain levels and in certain styles for your needs, your individual needs. If you have shaky hands, a handheld magnifier might not be your best choice. A stand magnifier that sits on the page and you lean over and look down into it might be a better choice. You may be best with reading glasses. The low vision specialist will help you decide what works best for you. Sometimes just larger print is helpful. Large print books are widely available in scalable fonts. Printed from a computer can turn almost anything that you can get in electronic format into large print. You can also get audio format books from other sources than the Talking Book program, which, by the way, talking books are read by live narrators, not computer speech. But you can buy into services like Audible, Chirp, audiobooks, recorded books. There's tons of commercially available resources for audiobooks. Even your local library will have an assortment of audiobooks. So you can kind of try before you buy if you're not sure that listening for reading is for you. Books and magazines both come from the Talking Book Library. Finding magazines in audio format isn't all that easy other than through Talking Books, but you can certainly find them in electronic format on your computer. And we're going to talk about how you can continue to use the computer if you're having trouble seeing the screen. Every state in the United States has a Talking Book library. Google, again, is your friend. Put in Talking Books and your state, and you'll get the single library, or some states have multiple libraries. Ebooks and electronic books like Kindle and other iBooks and those kinds of sources are also ways to continue reading, especially if a larger font or changing the background and foreground color would help you. You can reverse so that the background is dark and the letters are light. And for those of us who are light sensitive, that makes reading much easier, more pleasant, and means that you can read longer. And scaling the font can help you get more in your field of vision if you have a limited field. And still have good sharp 20/20 central vision. You can even take this font down smaller so you can get more in your field of vision. Bookshare is another source that is specific for people who are blind or visually impaired. And you can get access to electronic and books that have been recorded using a computer synthesized voice. And oftentimes those books come straight to Bookshare from the publisher, and they're available on the day they're released, which for some people, depending on their reading choices, is real important. I remember when the Harry Potter books were being released, Bookshare was very proud that they were releasing the Harry Potter book on their platform the same day they went on sale at the bookstore, which meant Braille readers could get an electronic download of Harry Potter and read it in Braille at the same time everybody else started reading it in print. What about reading newspapers? Newspapers are accessible. If the print is too small or the contrast is not sharp enough, you can get access to newspapers through your computer. You can get access on Alexa. Oh, she's going to talk now. Alexa, cancel. That A girl, I try to remember to call her. And excuse me, other resources like the National Federation of the Blind Newsline program that gives you access to newspapers through your telephone, even a landline phone. You don't have to be a smartphone user. Through their app, it can be emailed to you, like the entire contents of a newspaper could be emailed to you every day. If you want to read the the Rhode Island Courier. Every day it can come straight to your mailbox. And then the other thing is that, excuse me, please. Newsline has lots of magazines besides newspapers. So like government bulletins, AARP magazines, those kinds of things are also available. So those are some ideas to help you with reading. And if reading isn't your passion, that's fine. Whatever your passion is, finding a way to do it is possible. And I don't want you to leave this seminar without an understanding and an inkling that that is possible for you too. My last tidbit on reading is through the Library of Congress Talking Book Program. They have a plethora of books about living with vision loss. So if you're early in the journey, you're still using your vision a great deal. You're not sure what it's going to be like when you aren't able to use your vision to do what you do now. You can read about others. It can be inspiring, it can be informative, and it can bring peace to your heart about living with vision loss and the possibilities that are still open to you. Other things that I'm passionate about are crafts, and that can include lots of things. I include lots of activities in arts and crafts. And if you aren't crafty, don't worry, because it may span an activity that you enjoy. And I don't want to leave out the men in the group, so I also include woodworking in arts and crafts, even though probably most people would put that as a separate topic. I want to talk a little bit here about the kinds of accommodations you can put in place that fit your needs. And this can apply to other activities besides arts and crafts. Using contrast, lighting, and even texture changes can make a big difference on how well you can perform any task. So you want to make sure that the object that you're working on contrasts with the work surface. If, let's say, for example, I'm making a necklace of red beads, I would want to put those red beads in a white bowl so that I can see them well. And I would want to spread out a white towel underneath that bowl so that if I drop one, I can see it well and it won't roll away so far. Same thing is true if you're cutting up a, let's say, a bell pepper in your kitchen to stir fry tonight. Put that bell pepper on a white cutting board rather than a wood or a dark colored cutting board. And if all of your cutting boards are one color, get some cutting board mats that are different colors so that you can use contrast to help you see where the edges are and where the pieces are and what's too big and what's too small. If you're doing a project using tools, whether you're in the kitchen or doing arts and crafts, you want to make sure that you try to get tools or make your tools contrast with the project you're working on. Same idea with the white towel. If I'm knitting red wool, I would want a white towel in my lap. If I'm using pastels for a baby blanket, I would want a dark brown or a black towel in my lap. And if I'm really looking at those stitches, then I would want my knitting needles to contrast with my wool. Now, how do you do that if all they sell is silver or if they're all, color coded by size? Well, that doesn't mean that you can't use some airplane enamel paint and get 2 sets of knitting needles and paint one set dark and paint the other white, or leave one a light color or dark color, whichever it is, and paint the other set a contrasting color. You want to use directed task lighting when you are working on projects like arts and crafts or tasks in the kitchen. And the best kind of task lighting is a lamp that has an opaque shade, one that you can't see through and the light doesn't glow out of. So like a metal or a dark plastic shade. And you want to make sure it has a gooseneck or an articulated arm so that you can move that light around to the spot so that it's close to your work, but not glaring up in your face or coming in from the side and causing glare. The closer you get the lamp to the object you're looking at, the brighter the light will be. So you don't have to go out and buy a 200-watt bulb. I'm not even sure those are available anymore since we mostly don't have incandescent bulbs, but you get my meaning. You don't have to buy brighter. Getting it closer makes it brighter automatically. When you have it positioned close to the task, it won't shine back up in your face unless the surface that it's reflecting off of is too light. And then you might use darker backgrounds to eliminate reflected glare. So, okay, all of that isn't working for me, Neva. I can't see that contrast anymore. Light doesn't help me a bit. I'm in that boat. So I get it. You're gonna want to do arts and crafts that are tactile, things you can touch. I already gave you a couple of examples of that. Beading. I love to make necklaces and bracelets. It's lots of fun. And whether you're stringing beads or you're doing bead weaving, which is very delicate and tiny work, you can make beautiful things with beads and, you know, skill and a little bit of training. Working in clay, working with dried flowers or soapstone or balsa wood is all tactile. Whether you're carving or shaping or arranging, you can be artsy craftsy if you want to. There are plenty of things to do. All right, enough on the arts and crafts. Some of the things I just talked about will apply to the next category of having fun that I want to talk about, which is playing cards or board games. So a lot of people tell me that when their vision gets to a certain point, they can't see the cards that are in their hand. They can't see the cards people lay down on the table, or they can't see the board like the Scrabble board and the letters and that kind of thing. Well, there are lots of adapted games out there. Playing cards, for example, come in a variety of large print and high contrast forms that you can get through the specialty companies that sell products for people who are blind or visually impaired, like Independent Living Aids, LS&S Group, or Maxi Aids. They're all online. They all have wonderful products. One of the decks of cards even has different colors for the suits. If you're having trouble telling between red and black, it has like red and black for two of the suits, and then I think the other two suits are yellow and green or something like that, so that 4 different colors for the 4 different suits, so that it's real easy not to get mixed up. And some of the cards have numbers that are a good 2.5 inches tall. So if you're like me, so I needed larger and larger print as my vision got worse, then you can find bigger than the jumbo index cards that they sell at the drugstore or at you know, your local game store. When none of that works anymore, I'm here to encourage you to learn 13 characters in Braille, because with just 13 characters, A through J, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. And then let's see, you're going to need K for king. All right, so that's 11. You're going to need Q for queen. Okay, so that's 12. And you're going to need S for spades. Everything else, oh, I'm going to revise my outline. You might need 14, because X sometimes is used for the 10, because there's only 2 Braille characters on a card. It's the denomination of the card, so it'd be a 3, And then it's the suit of the card. So it might be a C for clubs, an H for hearts, a D for diamonds, or an S for spades. Okay. What's interesting is in Braille, the number 3 is the same character as the letter C. So the 3 of clubs would have 2 identical characters on it. You have to just remember that the first one is the denomination and the second one is the suit. With a little bit of practice, you'll be playing cards just like a champ, just like you used to. So giving up poker with the boys on Thursday night isn't something you have to do. There are even tactile poker chips out there that are really wonderful. They're different colors and different shapes for the different denominations. Bingo cards are available in both large print and tactile versions. Yes, they have Braille numbers on them, but they also have raised large print numbers, so you can feel the number 3 or the number 22. You can also buy Braille, large print, and high contrast versions of a lot of different board games. Monopoly, Scrabble, checkers, backgammon, and chess all come to mind. They're all very easily available. And a lot of different card games like Skip Bo and Uno and you name it. Oh, Crazy Eights and Old Maid. Some of you might be thinking, well, I don't really play cards anymore. But if you have grandkids or young children of your own, playing cards and playing games is an important part of family life as well as their strategy and concept building. If dice is your game, tactile dice are available, and there's no Braille skills needed for tactile dice because the dots are the same configuration as the printed dots or the debossed dots on a regular set of dice. So the 5 has 5 raised dots in the same shape as the 5 on a dice. So you can play craps, you can play Farkle, you can play all sorts of dice games with tactile dice. So if playing games is fun for you and you enjoy doing it, you can do it with a lot of different ways, including electronic, online accessible games through RS games like Robert Sam Games, and Quentin's Playroom is another accessible computerized game where you can play all sorts of games and it all works. But that means using a computer. And if using the computer is getting hard for you, there are lots of ways to adapt what the computer does to make it easier for you to use. You can use screen enlargement programs to either make the characters and the graphics larger on the screen, or you can keep them the same size and make the contrast better on the screen. For a lot of people with restricted fields, that is the most effective tool at first, is to increase that contrast. And smaller monitors for restricted fields, like a laptop, are often easier than big monitors. If you have the inherited retinal disease like I have, which is cone rod degeneration, larger did help me for a long time. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just get a 45-inch TV or a 55-inch TV or something huge like that. Well, first of all, you better have an awful big desk to put it on, because you got to still sit pretty close to it if you're really going to see it. And if you think about it, if I'm sitting at my chair so I can reach my keyboard, which is what I'm doing now, and I have a 60-inch monitor in front of me, it's a long way up to that top left corner to see if my mouse pointer is really on the icon I want. So be careful how large you go with your monitors. Also, you lose resolution if you're not careful with the great big monitors. So I know a lot of people who are pretty successful with 32-inch monitors. That's about as big as I would recommend going, but you can experiment for yourself, especially once we can go back into stores like Best Buy and Fry's and that kind of thing, and get close to those kinds of devices and try them for ourselves. Built into Microsoft Office and the Mac operating system are accessibility features that enlarge the text, change the contrast, and speak out loud. And if that is sufficient for you in the Microsoft Office or Microsoft environment, sorry, the Windows environment, then that's great. By all means, use it. But if you find it frustrating or it doesn't work for you, then you may need to consider using a Mac, which has full capability screen reader and screen enlarger built in, or an off-the-shelf, that's wrong. Or you can use a proprietary software like JAWS, Job Access with Speech, ZoomText, which enlarges JAWS Speaks, or the combination of those two, which is called Fusion. So you can have enlargement and high contrast as well as speech backup to maybe make the computer faster and easier for you to use. All of those programs are available as demos, so you can try them. There are even free screen reader programs for the Windows environment called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access. And that can make a huge difference in how much you could use the computer for fun, like playing games, doing email, surfing the web, going on Facebook, searching your genealogy, but it can also lead to the ability to continue to or to begin to work. So make sure that if you are not able to use your computer now, you reach out and find resources to help you figure out what works best for you, which would probably be available in your state through the vocational rehabilitation program, or if you're older, through the independent living program throughout the country. Those are available. All right, one last thought on that is touch typing is an essential skill. And when I say touch typing, I really mean touch keyboarding. Touch typing was what they taught us when I was in school on a manual typewriter with keycaps so you couldn't see the letters. But now there's a lot more keys on the keyboard that you need to be able to find and activate by touch. Because if your face is down on the keyboard looking at what your fingers are doing, number one, you're going to have a terrible neck ache. Number two, you're not going to be able to see what's happening on the screen. And number three, you're going to be so slow that you will never use the computer efficiently. So people who use the computer efficiently know how to use it without looking at the keyboard. One last thought about having fun, and then we're going to talk about some other kind of more serious topics, is gardening might be something that you could do for fun. Whether you were a gardener and you've had to give it up because that 1.5 acres of gardening just isn't any fun to deal with limited vision, you can still be a gardener using a container garden concept, or gardening squares or raised beds, and that type of thing. Some of the skills you'll need to develop is how to mark, to identify your seed locations and what type of plant they are. That might be where you would use those Braille skills that you used for learning to play cards. You could go ahead and be adventurous and learn those other 12 characters of the Braille alphabet and be able to make yourself labels. Container gardening is a positive too, because you can move the plants to where the sun is as the summer goes on and as the day moves on. You can grow herbs and vegetables to help in the kitchen with your meal preparation. You can just grow pretty flowers or foliage to enhance the environment. And if gardening was never your thing, but that sounds appealing, the Talking Book program has great books about container gardening, gardening in squares. You can grow a lot of things in a 1-foot square pot, including food to bring to the table. So one last thought about having fun is life is about being joyful, in my opinion. And if we're not having fun or doing things that bring us joy, it's tough to get up in the morning. That alarm goes off and you think, oh, no thanks, not ready for another day. But if you have something to look forward to, something you enjoy, something that you can share with others, something you can do to give back to the community, something you can do to connect with other people that have similar interests and values, then it brings purpose to your day. And I encourage you to look for that in your life and to expand it into new horizons if you already have it. You may be thinking, well, that all sounds good, Neva, but I need more basics than that. I'm having trouble with just every day getting around safely. My vision has progressed to the point that I don't feel safe anymore. So you might be having trouble seeing steps and curbs, or objects in your path, like even indoors, toys that are left out, or shoes that are left in the entryway. And if you're always looking down at your feet to see where your next step is going to take you, first of all, you're going to bump into something that's not by your feet if you're not real careful. And number two, you're going to get a neck ache that won't quit. For the first 40 some odd years of my life, I bent my neck in about a 45 to 90 degree angle pretty much all day long if I was awake. And I am here to tell you, chronic neck problems are no fun. And so if I can convince you to lift your head and find a new way to do things, maybe you'll be able to avoid chronic neck problems in your future. It could be that your vision fluctuates from day to day. One day it's great, the next day not so great. And that could have to do with the amount of light that's available. If it's a gray, gloomy, stormy day, you may not have as much functional vision. Or if it's the time of day, you may have stopped going anywhere at night because you just don't have vision to see things that you can see during the day. So you stay home when the sun goes down. If that's true for you, I want to, well, first of all, I want to say you don't have to live that way. Essentially, you're living the life of a prisoner. You're trapped in a familiar place, whether that place is your own home or your own bedroom. And you have a life sentence and you didn't do anything wrong. But there are keys to the jail. You can be set free. And I waited because I didn't know until I was 30. And I have to tell you that when I learned to use a long white cane and I was trained by an orientation and mobility instructor, I felt like a bird set free out of a gilded cage. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I could walk safely in unfamiliar places. I didn't know that I could cross a street without somebody with me. And through the training, I learned that. And after about 20 years of working with a cane and traveling the country and going anywhere I wanted to, anytime I wanted to, except when it was pouring rain, because I don't like to walk in the rain, just because I don't like to be wet, I transitioned to using a seeing eye dog. And I'm still working with my second seeing eye dog, although we are both slowing down, and he is almost 12 years old and is moving to semi-retirement, especially since COVID-19 and not going out all that much. If anything I've said has rung a bell with you, if you have questions about, what does that mean? I don't know, I can't use a long white cane. I'm not completely blind. Of course you can. If you're having trouble walking safely, if you're feeling reluctant to go out, then it's time to work with an orientation and mobility instructor to teach you how to use the tools and techniques that you'll need to travel safely. And some of those tools you already possess. They're your other senses, the sense of hearing, your sense of smell, your ability to interpret what your cane is touching, whether it's touching smooth cement or rough and bumpy asphalt or grass or rocky paths. Believe me, you can tell all of that by the way your cane feels in your hand. And if you think about it, a long white cane is really an extension of your arm. If you could do what the superhero does and do that extension and reach out and feel the ground, touch the ground about, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in front of where you're standing, then you could walk safely because you would know, oh, there's a curb, it's going up, I better step up. Or, oh dear, there's a manhole cover that's open, that's a pit, I have to go around that. Your cane can do that for you. It takes training. It doesn't happen immediately. It isn't fast, but you can do it, and you can do it in a relatively short amount of time when you think about the rest of your life not going anywhere alone and or going anywhere as safely as you can. Even walking with family members, there are techniques to learn to use what is called human guide, or sighted guide is another term you might hear, to hold their elbow properly and train them to help you best so that they don't drag you onto an escalator without stopping at the top and saying, we're about to go down an escalator, so you know what to expect. Do I sound like I'm speaking from experience? I am. It feels like the floor is falling out from under you when somebody walks you onto an escalator and you're not expecting it. I have to say, though, I didn't fall. I grabbed the rail and I didn't fall. Orientation and mobility skills are one of three of the most important skills I possess as a person with vision loss. The other one I've already talked about, one of the other ones I've already talked about, and that is the ability to use a keyboard by touch. And then my third most important blindness skill is reading Braille. So really, I've talked about all three. And when I first learned all three of these skills, I was an adult. So if you have a child with vision loss, or if you're a young person with vision loss, don't wait until you're 30 to learn to use a cane. Don't wait until you're staying home and never going anywhere by yourself. Even, for the first time. I didn't know that it was possible to use a computer, to read without eye strain, or to go places I wanted to go. But after listening to this presentation, you know that. So one last thought about learning to use a white cane or using a dog guide. A lot of people say, I would be embarrassed to use a long white cane. I'm really uncomfortable that people know I'm blind or that I have low vision. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to debunk that I don't want people to know, because if you're walking super slow down the sidewalk in your neighborhood or on your college campus or in the shopping mall, and you're looking down at your feet, and you're kind of wobbling, and you might bump into something that's off to your left or off to your right, a person, a corner, a pillar. Believe me, I've walked into my share. People aren't going to think you're having trouble seeing. What are they going to think? They're going to think you're drunk, or they're going to think you're high. So what people think of you can be changed for the positive, in my personal opinion, if you're using a long white cane and you're moving confidently and carefully and safely through the environment. And you'll be moving faster, I promise. The first day I went out in my neighborhood with a long white cane, I could not believe how glorious it was to walk as fast as I could walk with that cane and know that there was no tricycle in the sidewalk that I was going to fall over. And yes, I've done that. I knew when the ditch that I had to walk on a little skinny bridge to go across on my sidewalk happened, and I didn't have to go super slow to find that. And the other thing, when AFB, the American Foundation for the Blind, has done research about what people in the public think about people who use a long white cane, most people think, wow, that person must be really sharp and savvy to be able to do what they're doing and have less than perfect vision. Now, they may not understand that you have some usable vision. They may think you're totally blind. They may think when you use your white cane to walk up to, let's say, a counter at a flea market, okay, a table at a flea market, okay, and then you're using your vision to look at something, they might say something like, why are you using that cane if you can see? And because they can tell you're looking at the, I don't know, beautiful jewelry this person has made that's on display, okay? What a great opportunity to inform and educate that person that you have some vision, but it's a very narrow field of vision. Or you have some vision, but it's very blurry, and the only way I can see something is to get it very close to my eyes. And so for me to walk around safely and not run into people or fall down a set of stairs, I use a long white cane so I can move confidently through my world. And then they come away from the encounter knowing more about vision loss. There are lots of people in this world that don't know much about vision loss. And believe me, it takes all of us to educate them one person at a time. So we've talked a lot about some of the basics: lighting, contrast, high contrast, darks against lights, lights against darks, okay? I want to talk how you can use some of those things in your everyday world, whether it's at home or it's a part of your job. All of us have to do certain chores and jobs to be independent and to contribute to our families, whether we're part of a big family and we're young, or we're a roommate with other people who live in the same place as us, or a couple, or we're living independently on our own. Maybe for the first time, there are chores that have to be done. And sometimes those chores are the same chores we have to do at work. There are lots of the same modifications I've talked about for using lighting and contrast that work in the home and in the workplace for orienting to your environment, telling where you are in space, for locating things on shelves with dividers and buckets that are different colors and that type of thing. And also just using your organizational skills that you use to keep track of your craft supplies and your games and your reading materials. The same thing applies in the workplace, of using labeling features that you've developed, either Braille or audio labels, like Way Around is an audio label that you use with a smartphone, and Pen Friend and other audio labels or stickers that you use a little gizmo that you record an audio label, so that the next time you touch that sticker, either Way Around with your smartphone or the Pen Friend device will speak out loud the label. So like, let's say you worked someplace where there was a mail sorting cubicle arrangement, and you needed to pass along a document that was already printed, and you didn't want to scan it and send it electronically. You've already got the paper there. This person who needs to read it is going to print it out too. So you go find, and you find that person's mailbox by using those labels that you've put in place. The other types of things that you can do to, like, never overflow a glass or a cup of coffee again, is you could use a liquid level indicator. So whether you're at home or you're at the office, you can have this little gizmo that you hook on the side of a cup or a mug, and when you pour into it, the prongs that are down inside the glass, when the liquid touches it, the battery that's on the outside of the mug or the glass causes the little gizmo to make a buzzing noise or a beeping noise. And one of these liquid level indicators even has 2 levels of fullness. So the first noise is different from the second noise. It's a slow beep. And then when you fill it a little farther, you get a fast beep, all right? So then you know, ooh, I'm really getting close. At the first beep, you can stop there and you have room to add cream to your coffee. Another trick I use is I always pour something over the sink, because if I'm pouring something for myself, I don't mess with the liquid level indicator. I take my forefinger and I bend it over the top edge of the glass, and I tell when it's full by the liquid touching the bottom of my finger. Now that applies to cold things like iced tea and milk, okay? And if I pour it over the sink and I don't stop quick enough, or I'm not paying good attention, or the iced tea isn't really very cold yet and I didn't realize it was touching my finger, then if I do accidentally spill, or I'm not holding my glass level, then it goes into the sink and I don't have a big mess to clean up. I am all about not making messes if I can avoid them. With the coffee, I have a K-Cup machine, so I know which button to press to get the right amount of liquid in my cup. But if I'm using a coffee maker at the office and I'm pouring, I would use the liquid level indicator for that, because I don't like my finger in hot liquids. It hurts. So little tips like that make a big difference on how independent you are, as well as how good you feel about yourself. Being able to say, hey, I'm going to get myself a cup of coffee, cubicle mate, George, would you like for me to grab you one? And George is like, sure, you can do that. You bet. And that kind of reciprocal relationship goes a long way toward helping you and your coworker or your classmate or your roommate to build a relationship of trust, and the ability then to feel better when you have to ask George for assistance, because whatever's going on, you don't have the technique or the technology to deal with it. Safety features in the kitchen and on the job are also important. Silicone gloves to protect yourself from burning yourself when you're reaching into an oven. They make silicone gloves that allow you to even put your hand down in a pot of boiling water and pull out an egg, instead of trying to pour boiling water into a sieve to catch all the eggs. Same thing is true of turning pork chops on a grill. Now you have to be careful that there's no flames coming up, because the silicone gloves won't hold up against flames, but just heat, they will. And then long quilted gloves that come almost all the way up to your elbow, so that as you reach in an oven, you don't bump the top of your arm on the hot edge of the oven. Things like that to make it safer. And that can apply on the job too, depending on what kind of work you do. Safety is a #1 concern of most employers before hiring someone. But if you have your skills in place, if you have the tools you need and the techniques you need, then you have the ability to say, I am no more unsafe than anyone else on this job, in this place. And you can give them examples of what you do that they probably won't believe you can do. I'm going to close with one last thought, and that is that you are the one to set your limits. Don't let your vision limit you if there's a solution. And I promise you that there is. Don't let other people limit you by what they think you can do, because I promise you, you can do more than they think you can. And if they want you to do something that you can't do, you can learn how to do it. And how do you do that? You get connected with rehabilitation services, trainers, and people who are blind or visually impaired who are as independent as you want to be or more. Surround yourself with those kind of people and then take your skills out to the world. I had a lady ask me a couple of weeks ago if there were any blind quilting groups in Texas. And I said, well, not that I'm aware of. There is one lady who is blind, who is a quilter, who's quite famous, who lives in Texas, but I don't believe she has a blind quilting group. And she's in Waco. This lady was in Houston, not very close together. I said, what about joining your local quilting group? Do you have a shop near you? Do they have notices about clubs that meet, and are any of them close to you so that the transportation would be possible? You could use Lyft or Uber, or maybe the paratransit service would take you from your house to that location and back. Or maybe you have a family member or friend who would take you long enough for you to get acquainted and build a relationship with the group. And maybe there's somebody in that group that lives out your direction and wouldn't mind carpooling for future meetings. It's hard to start that on the first day, but after a while, that's a pretty easy thing to do. And she said, I never thought of that. Do you think they'd let me in? Well, of course they'd let you in. And when you get in, you're able to show the world, starting with that little quilting group, what you do to enjoy the same aspect of life that they enjoy. Now, I know not all of you are quilters. I'd be surprised if any of you were quilters. I'd be happy because that's something I love. But take that concept and apply it to anything you do. Book club, church groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Kiwanis, Lions Club. It doesn't matter. Anything you want to do in your community, get out there and join them and figure out how to do what you can do to contribute to your community and to our world. And then living life with vision loss will be a better thing for you and a better thing for our society. Thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate you all being here. Bye-bye.